checking it all out. Let's see where we're at here. Just doing a couple refreshes while I make sure everything is working. And it looks like possibly live on... Why is that on? That's really bizarre. There's one on Facebook, Coolio. And I think it'll be going live on... the party page here in just a moment. There it is. Pretty cool. So that's 2 out of 3 boxes checked so far. And it looks like YouTube is on as well. Well, I'm excited about this because things are working right off the bat. And that is very, very exciting. Hopefully the stream kicks up and works okay. Looks like stream says it's in good health, which is good. And yeah, I'm going to just kind of roll, I guess. Interrupted. YouTube seems to be going good. That is working okay. I'm just getting a round of applause for myself. If let's see, that should be going. And that should be going as well. Huh. YouTube is working. Looks like we got 22 folks watching. If you can hear me, let me know in the comments below. I'm just getting things going here. The live party officially will start at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. I'm just getting things going, making sure the tech works and all that good jive. Hopefully it will. I believe it is. Oh, okay. Yeah, it looks like it is right there. I'm just refreshing a couple pages and making sure that everything is going swimmingly. And it looks like it is. Audio is low. Well, we can certainly fix that. I have to actually move this anyway. How is that? Is the audio better or worse? I feel like I'm at the eye doctor. Better or worse? Let me know if that is better or worse, and I can certainly bump it over here as well. I just have to find the right button. There it is. Checking it out. Checking it out. Check. Hopefully that is a little bit better with the audio. Let's see. William says, I hear you okay. Greg says that's better. Well, that's good to hear. Awesome. I appreciate the feedback, everybody. It's always, once I click the go live button, it's always this moment of sheer panic, to be totally honest. Whether or not it's going to be distributed, in a smooth fashion. And so far, so good. It seems like everything is going well. Matt says it sounds good, brother. Matt, hello to you over there at Eddie's Guitars in St. Louis. So good to see that you're on. I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to hop on early just to say hi, and of course, make sure the tech was running okay before we started the official Fretboard Wizard check-in party that we're doing. This is kind of going to be a midway check-in. Midway, I hesitate to say midway because that just insinuates that you should be at a certain point in the program, and that's not the case at all. So let's just call it a Fretboard Wizard check-in. And what I'm going to do is answer a few questions, answer the questions that you have about Fretboard Wizard thus far, but I'll be kicking things off with a quick overview of what I call the Foundational 5. And this is really the core musical theory concepts that go into Fretboard Wizard that you further actually apply to your guitar. So we'll go into that, and I've even brought, check this out. I've even brought a whiteboard. Kind of a cool thing. So I'll be illustrating some things and kind of reteaching some of those Foundational 5 pieces very briefly here, and of course answering your questions. And I've got details about the giveaway, etc. We'll be going into. But if y'all have any questions right now, go ahead and let me know in the comments. This is it'll be an Ask Me Anything until about 11 o'clock. So if you do have any questions, let me know. I'm just checking out comments here. Hello from Romania. Wow, so cool. Awesome. Let's see, what else do we have here? I'll pop over to this. Happy to learn new things on guitar. Well, cheers, Nolan. I'm happy to teach things on guitar. It's actually my favorite thing to do. This is, for those of you who don't know, I just held up my coffee mug. This is the Hodag. It's a mythical beast from from northern Wisconsin, the Upper Peninsula. Kind of neat. Anyways, I'm going to have a sip of coffee while the questions roll in. Let's see. I just saw Tom Carpenter's message, and he says, "Funny, I couldn't get sound on my iPad. Then I heard the voice coming through my new Spark amp." He just says Bluetooth. I've had that happen on numerous occasions. A lot of times I'll play music in the garage when I'm working, and I'll forget to turn off the speaker, and I'll be inside, and I'm so frustrated because no sound is coming through. And then I realize that I'm still connected to the speaker in the garage. Anyways, yeah, great story, Tone, right? But Tom, you're not alone. You're not alone. Cross says this is his 4th run through Fretboard Wizard. He said this never gets old. Lots of fun and learning. Well, cheers, Cross. I'm happy to see that you're tuning in, and I'm happy to see that this is your 4th run through the Fretboard Wizard course. That's one of the cool things about the course, in my opinion. Of course, I'm biased, but I think the most beautiful thing about the Fretboard Wizard course is that it's beneficial each time you run through it. It's not a one-and-done course. It's a course that continues to give because I've described this before as kind of a pendulum that goes back and forth, in which you come into the Fretboard Wizard course and you learn the theories, you learn the concepts, and then you take them and actually apply them to your guitar in the real world. And then that brings about more questions, which you can then bring back to the Fretboard Wizard course. And generally speaking, the concepts discussed in the Fretboard Wizard course will answer those questions you have. You just are bringing more context to the equation. And then you go and it starts over again. You bring that back into the real world and you apply those things to your guitar. Questions will inevitably come up. You can come back to Fretboard Wizard and lo and behold, those answers are right under your nose, which is so cool. And really awesome to hear that Cross is on his 4th lap through the Fretboard Wizard course. That's just so awesome. This is good. This is good. Got a couple of questions here that came in, and this one says, "What mics do you like for recording?" And again, this is just the Ask Me Anything portion. I'm just kind of kicking this off to get us all warmed up, to get you settled in, making sure that you're comfy with your coffee or whatever beverage you choose. And the mics that I favor for recording, let's see. Well, I like this. This is a Ear Trumpet Edwina mic that I've obviously using now just for my vocals, but it's a great mic for recording. I like the Octava. I think it's the MK012. It's a small diaphragm condenser. I also like the Neumann. I think I'm mixing up the numbers. It's a small condenser again. And then there's a set of mics that I've been using in the studio the last couple of months, and I'm trying to remember their name, and I can't. It's a match stereo pair. We're using a vintage Neumann overhead, and we're using a match stereo pair. I want to say it's Earthworks. I can't remember. If it comes to me later on in the stream, I'll mention it. But those are the ones I favor. Really, whatever mic sounds good. A lot of times, what I'll do is I'll try different mics under headphones. Meaning, I'll put headphones on, set up the mic, and I'll just play guitar into it. And whichever one I favor is the one I go for. I think a lot of times we can get stuck. I can get stuck in brand names and things like that. But whatever sounds good really is kind of what I lean on. So that's kind of what I choose for recording anyway. It's really kind of player's choice. It's really a subjective type of choice. Some mics bring out the boominess in your guitar. Some mics bring out the detail in your guitar. And also, on top of that, you have mic position, which can drastically affect how your guitar sounds through a microphone. A lot of times, the more you bring the mic towards the body, the bassier it gets. The more you bring the mic towards the fingerboard, the more clear and articulate it gets. In fact, I think I can demo it right now. I don't have headphones in, so I'm not hearing what you're hearing. So please let me know if that's the case. But here I have the mic, and I'll actually move it just a touch, pointed down towards the guitar. This is really kind of pointed towards the neck body joint, which is one of my favorite positions. If I actually just rotate a little bit and the mic is now pointed towards the body of the guitar, you might hear something completely different. So not only is the individual mic selection, what mic you're using, mic positioning is crucial. I mean, I'm talking big time crucial. So even if you have only one mic, you can get different tones. You just have to mess around with its location and how it's kind of oriented with the guitar. Again, towards the neck, generally more clear and articulate, less bass towards the body, a little bit more bass, depending on what you want. It's kind of a fun little trick that you can do. Cross has a question, and he says this: Tony, do you prefer to record your guitar plugged in or off the microphone? I have an interesting answer. Actually, both. Whenever I go to the studio, and I've been going on a monthly basis over the last 3 months, which has been a really fun experiment, by the way, to kind of have this deadline always approaching every month to kind of purge my creativity, if you will, kind of get the ideas out and then start fresh the next month. But onto the recording question, do I favor it plugged in or off the microphone? I actually favor both. A lot of times I won't even use the plugged in signal if I'm in the studio. But there are occasions in which I'll add just a little bit of it to the mix for some clarity, maybe some brilliance, some articulation. And that seems to kind of capture some of the detail that might not be captured on the microphone. Most of the time I use 100% microphone signal, but there are the occasions, especially some of the lower tunings that I use, things that can get heavily, really bass heavy. I'll use the plugged in signal just to clean it up a little bit, add a little bit of edges to the sound, add a little bit of clarity. That's a really awesome question, Cross, and one of those things that you don't know until you're kind of in the studio and kind of hearing it on our headphones, and you have all these realizations where you're like, whoa, this sounds too bassy, but then you add some of that pickup in and it clears it up. So that's a great question. And again, we got about 15 minutes until we'll officially start the Fretboard Wizard check-in, which I'll go through some of the Fretboard Wizard materials, primarily the foundational 5. We'll break it up into 2 parts. I'll teach it, and then of course I'll take questions live here and answer any questions you may have about the Fretboard Wizard course. And then I have some details about the giveaway as well, so I'll go ahead and divulge those a little bit later. So right now, I'm just kind of taking Ask Me Anything questions. As the technology gets warmed up, you get warmed up, I get warmed up, I get caffeinated. There's Mike P says this: Tony, my dad used to play that same lick that you just played. I heard it all the time when I was a kid. Played it on his 1942 Gibson J45 back in the 60s. Man, Mike, so the lick Mike's referring to is a G run. And I have a little bit of a story about when I first learned it. It's this lick here. But anyway, so that's the kind of the bluegrass G run, if you will. And I remember when I first learned it, I learned it just simply as a series of notes. I just learned the lick. I didn't know how to strum with it. I didn't know how to do really anything with it. It was just this. And I thought, man, that is so cool, because I'd be able to go to a guitar store and I'd be able to play that. And I think just by process of association, I would be assumed a bluegrass player, which is what I wanted to be. But I only knew a G run, so I would play that singularly, and it would just it would give me my guitar fix, my bluegrass fix. And then later on, I was actually able to start incorporating that into strumming, and I was starting to incorporate that into little fills in between singing and things like that. And it was one of those things where all of a sudden I was like, whoa, this is so much more than just a simple series of notes. This can be a fill, this can be an ending, this can be a kickoff, this can be so many things. And it's when I was able to kind of marry the lick with strumming and be able to kind of seamlessly go between the two, the G run and then back to strumming, or from strumming to the G run. So yeah, it's a super popular lick, and one that I was going to say I overuse it. I don't know if you can overuse it. You know what? I don't think you can. You can't overuse it. So I'm going to keep using it, and I encourage you to keep using it. I encourage everybody to keep using it. Actually, one of the cool things, if you really want to geek out one day, is to just look up G run on YouTube or what have you, and just hear all the different variations. It seems like such a, like I said, a singular lick. There's so many different variations. It's really cool to see. A couple more questions coming in. Michael K says, what temperature and humidity level do you keep your guitar room at? This is a great question. And now it's getting colder in Montana, so my humidifier is really getting put to the test. And I love it. It's passing the test with flying colors. I have a Venta air washer. It's the medium size one, and I keep it in my guitar room, and it's a great humidifier. I cannot recommend it enough. It's not inexpensive. It's about, I want to say it's about $300 or $400. But it's, in my opinion, it's worth every penny. I mean, I have 10 guitars hanging on the wall, multiple guitars in cases, so it's really important that I keep the room at the proper level, which I'll get to in a second, Michael. I haven't forgot the question, but that particular humidifier is so clean. It's easy to use. It's easy to clean. It stays clean, but it's also very easy to clean when you have to. And it just does a great job. So I keep my room anywhere between 45 and 50%. On the colder, drier days, it gets really close to 45. Sometimes it dips a little bit below, but I can control that. I can just boost the humidity level via the humidifier. So I keep it between 45 and 50% humidity at right around, it varies, I would say 67 to 70 degrees. Generally, the room sits at about 68, which is kind of the sweet spot. In my opinion, the guitars seem super healthy. You know, I'm in there all the time. Every night before bed, that's kind of my routine. I put Emerson down. Once Emerson's down and sleeping, I run downstairs to check my guitar room humidity levels or refill the humidifier if need be. And it usually sits at about 68 degrees and right smack dab between 45 and 50%, although it's actually a little ironically warm today here in Bozeman. So I checked it this morning and it was at 52%. So I just turned off the humidifier, closed the door, and it'll kind of take care of itself. It'll level out. But that's an awesome question, Michael, especially in the winter months. I mean, this is definitely the time when you need to be considering guitar humidity, guitar health, because when your guitars dry out, not only are they susceptible to cracking, I mean, that's kind of the extreme end of the equation, but your fret ends can start poking out because the fretboard actually shrinks because it's actually released all its moisture and it's kind of condensing. Think of a sponge. But also on a more minimal level, but little indications that your guitar might be dry is that the playability might start to suffer. You might notice some buzzing. You might notice just some odd kind of fuzzy noises from the strings because as your guitar lets go moisture, the top starts to sink a little bit, and that brings the strings down. So it might integrate some more fret buzz and things like that. Just early indicators that your guitar might be dry. Really an awesome question, Michael K. Next question from Cross. He says, how are Mom and Junior doing? They're doing fantastic. Emerson's doing great. He just had his 2-month checkup. He got his first dose of shots this week, which was, as a parent, was horrible to see. I was holding him, and he got his shots in his little legs, and it's just his face. Ugh, it killed me. But he is doing great. Mom Whitney's doing awesome, and it's it's so cool to see it's so cool to feel like we're kind of getting into a groove. Like when Emerson was first born, it was like this, it was kind of novel. I mean, it was new. We were, new parents. This is my second child. And, but it was a long time ago. Aiden's now 13, and I had to learn a lot of things over again. But I feel like we got this groove going, and it's pretty awesome. It's really cool to experience. So thanks for checking in on us, Cross. Let's see. Adam M says this, and it's a great question, and actually it may segue into our Fretboard Wizard discussion pretty well here. Adam M asks this: I can't sing. Does that hurt my guitar playing? No, not necessarily. Not necessarily at all. However, I will say this. You might not consider yourself a singer, and that's totally fine. I didn't start singing until, I want to say maybe 5 years ago. And it was more of a curiosity exploration for me. Playing guitar and filling in various bands. I've always noticed that the singer has a unique perspective on the song, a unique perspective on the melody, and can kind of internalize and express that melody, not only vocally, but also on the guitar. And I'm actually referring to one person in particular here as an old bandmate of mine, Jim Dungan, when I played in the Bridger Creek Boys here in town. He had this fantastic ability he was a great singer, but also when he played a lead, he would just take that melody and it would just flow through his fingers. And that's, to me, one of the biggest benefits of singing in terms of being a guitar player, is to be able to internalize a melody and process it in a different way that actually does come out in your guitar playing. Now, I say that, and I think a lot of us, myself included, I wouldn't say that I'm a singer. Like, I don't consider myself a vocalist, number one. I consider myself a guitar player, number one. But there's you can sing. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be like Carrie Underwood style. You can sing and hum, and that's just as much processing that you need to internalize melodies and to have it actually affect your guitar playing. So, if you can't sing, it's okay. It's not going to affect your guitar playing, but I will say that if you start to explore singing, humming, whistling a melody, that will influence your guitar playing in a positive way. So it can actually be an addition to your guitar playing, a positive little piece of the puzzle there. That's an awesome question. Mark says, greetings from New Hampshire. Very cool. Ken P says this: Tony, I see hockey gear on you and in studio from time to time. Do you play? Yes, I do. Actually, this is awesome. I was just checking the time. Sorry. This is a great question because I played hockey all through high school. In fact, I played ice hockey. I moved up to Minnesota to play junior hockey in my latter years of high school, junior and senior year. And then after that, it was like cold turkey quit. Hockey just dropped out of my life. And I was really burnt out. I was trying to be a good student, but also manage a junior hockey schedule, which was really intense at the time. We played 80-some plus games during the school year. So I was missing a lot of school, but trying to maintain that, etc. So I was kind of burnt out. And I let hockey go for about 13 years. I didn't start playing until 2017 after taking, I think I stopped playing hockey in 2000, maybe it was longer than 13 years. Anyways, it was a while. And I just decided it was New Year's 2015. I was sitting here at the studio and I said, you know what? I'm going to order a full set of goalie gear. I play goalie. It's my favorite position. And I just decided to order all the gear, which was a huge commitment. The goalie gear is not cheap. And so it showed up, and I remember I actually suited up in the studio, and I was like, this is really cool. And the next day or 2 days later, I actually went to the rink and just did an open hockey. It was a very steep learning curve, after taking 13 years off or more. And I now am in love again. I'm having the most fun I've ever had playing hockey right now. And I know that seems not a huge parallel to guitar, but I actually hear this story a lot, that at a certain point in time, a student, some friends of mine have let go of the guitar, and now they're just rediscovering it and having so much more fun because the expectations are different. I was taking things so seriously initially with hockey that it really removed all the fun, and I wasn't able to see the fun. And now I go to the rink and I'm just super grateful to play, and I'm enjoying every second of it. And this is a direct parallel to so many guitar journeys, and that, when you're young in high school, you play the guitar, you have your band, you have maybe these big dreams to play or make it, whatever that means for you at that time. And then, life starts to happen, marriage, kids, job, career, moving, you name it. A number of things can happen, and the guitar starts to take a back seat. But what I'm seeing now more and more is that people coming back to the guitar are bringing this new perspective, this vision of having fun. And that is actually increasing their focus, and that's actually helping them feel progress. And that's one of the coolest things that I've noticed. And I know it seems weird to kind of draw this parallel between hockey and guitar, but it's a very real thing, and it's something that I certainly can relate to because I've been there, but just with hockey. Ken says Richfield, Minnesota. No, I was actually in Mankato, Minnesota. Small world. Oh, no way. Ken says he grew up in North Oaks, Minnesota, played at the Edina High School. I believe they were in our division, if I'm not mistaken. Minnesota obviously has a ton of different high school hockey teams and various things, but the junior team I played at, the junior team I played for, was based in Mankato at the time. They're now in Rochester, the Ice Hawks. They're, I think they're in the... that was the MJHL. I'm not sure what the league is now. Anyways, let's transition into our official Fretboard Wizard check-in point here. Let me just kind of give you the rundown of how today is going to work. I have to get official, but not official. You know what I mean? So in today's live guitar party, we're going to dig right into the Fretboard Wizard course. I want to, of course, answer your questions. And how it's going to work is I've got 6 parts for us today. And I think you'll really enjoy this. I think it'll be a great recap for those of you who have been through the Foundational 5. I think it will bring about a lot of light bulb moments, and you may very well make some new discoveries. If at any point in time you have a question today, please, in the comments, put hashtag question. Type in hashtag question and then go ahead and ask your question. This will kind of help me know that, hey, this is a question and not just a kind of a random comment, which random comments are fine too. But I just want to make sure that I answer as many questions as I possibly can, because these live events with the Fretboard Wizard course that coincide with the Fretboard Wizard course always bring about so many light bulb moments and further clarification. I get really, really excited for them. So make sure to ask away, but just please make sure to put hashtag question when you do have a question. So part number 1, just to get to those 6 parts, I'm going to start going over the Foundational 5, the musical alphabet, major scale construction, and the chord matrix. We'll have a break after those 3 topics, and I'll go ahead and open the floor up for your questions. Again, at any point in time, if you do have a question, hashtag question, go ahead and ask it, and we'll collect those, and I'll dedicate some time to that after we go over those first 3 topics. And then we'll move on to chord tonality, the cage system, and the universal rules that the Foundational 5 present, and that are incredibly applicable, incredibly powerful, and some of the most potent musical tools you can have in your arsenal. We'll go over those. We'll take another break for questions, and then I'll give you the scoop on the giveaway, and I want to celebrate some light bulb moments at the end. And I'll have you type those in just a little bit later. I don't want to flood the comments with every little thing, and then it gets crazy. So let's go ahead and, before I dig in to the musical alphabet, major scale, and chord matrix, I want to say hi to folks that are tuning in. I see so many people. Brian D. over on Facebook, Michael W. on Facebook, Scott S., Kathy P., Shariel N. I hope I said that right. I'm not in the business of butchering names. I try my best. Brian K. over on Facebook as well. Kevin H. And then we have just a whole bunch of folks on YouTube as well. We've got GT, Vivek, Damon, Doug S., Brian D., Adam J. And then over on the Tony's Acoustic Challenge side of things, we've got so many folks. Jim G., Dan J., Jumpin' Jeff, Charles M., Dave L., Beatrice, Sal, Marty F., Howard, Michelle, Dan, Brian S., Christina S, Ricardo, Jeff C, David C, Dan, Doug B, Bernie, I think I said Dave L already. If I didn't, welcome Dave L for the second time maybe. Jack A, JP, Ken P, Brian T, holy smokes, Bruce S, Ed S, Jim G, I think I said that's my second Jim G, Maddie D, Greg P, Chuck in New Mexico, Ken P, I mean, so many people, Tanya L, welcome everybody, and thanks for taking time out to dedicate to your guitar journey. This is all about learning today, and I want to dig right into the first three portions of the Foundational 5. For those of you in the Fretboard Wizard course, the Fretboard Wizard course, just as an overview, is designed to strip away the noise that can happen when you try and learn music theory. Fretboard Wizard is really dedicated to the 10% of musical theory that you're going to use 99% of the time. It's the distilled version of the things you need to know, because everything within Fretboard Wizard is the root of everything else you'll ever learn in musical theory, period. I mean, we're talking chord extensions, you name it. You can trace it back to a concept within Fretboard Wizard. And these concepts are so vital, it's really important you have a firm grasp on each of these concepts. And some of you might say, yeah, I know that. I cannot stress enough sinking the time into the Foundational 5, because it will come up again and again and again. I'm still amazed to this day. I could be at a recording session, somebody hands me a chart, and I look at these chords, and I'm like, what am I looking at? And if I take a step back, I take in the Foundational 5 information, or I access it, I'm able to apply it and deduce what I need to know without having to look things up. And that's one of the huge benefits of Fretboard Wizard. It's very empowering in that it gives you the ability and the confidence to figure things out instead of always having to reach for a book or to type something in Google. And this goes for looking up chords to a song or figuring out how to even make chords, which we'll get to when we talk about chord tonality today. But let's start with the musical alphabet. And I'm going to actually use the whiteboard here just because I brought it. Basically, I want to use it. I want to feel professorial, if that's a term. If not, it is now. And the musical alphabet is quite simple. Basically starts on A, goes to G, and repeats, right? So I'll go ahead and write it out, and then we'll go through it. And I'll pull out what you absolutely need to know out of the musical alphabet. Okay, so this is the repeat point there. All right, the musical alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Easy enough. Probably if you're brand new to anything, any type of music notation, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A is something that you can definitely retain. And that's awesome. We don't need to make it any more complicated than it. We don't need to make it complicated, period. Because it's not. It's actually quite simple if you take it step by step. But the crucial piece to know about the musical alphabet is that, yes, there are these letters, but there's also spaces in between these letters. Now, these are the natural notes. You might be saying, Tone, I know there's more notes than that. There's flats, there's sharps. Where are those? I don't want you to worry about those right now, okay? I don't want you to focus. See, one of the pitfalls we get into when learning theory is we start to focus on everything, and it seems so big. Let's strip away things. Let's make it much more simple and easier for us to understand. And I'm not saying this in a way to dumb down things. I'm saying this in a way to make it useful and accessible in a quick fashion. So, as I mentioned, these are the notes in the musical alphabet, the natural notes. In between these notes, there are spaces, okay? We have two versions of a space, musical space. We have a whole step, and we have a half step, okay? What you need to know in regards to the musical alphabet is this. Between the notes B and C, and between the notes E and F, there's a naturally occurring half step. Between all the other pairs of natural notes, there's a naturally occurring whole step. Okay, that's cool, but what does this have to do with guitar? Let me explain. In terms of a measurement device on guitar, a whole step equals 2 frets and a half step equals 1 fret. Okay, whole step equals 2 frets, half step equals 1 fret. Okay, and this is going to come in big when I talk about the major scale. So that's our musical alphabet. We don't need to go into too big of amount of detail here because we have everything we need to know. Starts on A, ends on G, repeats. There's a naturally occurring half step between B and C and E and F. Between all the other pairs of natural notes, there is a whole step. Moving on to major scale construction. This might seem like science, major scale construction. It's really not. It's all about our starting point and the arrangement of whole and half steps. In the normal musical alphabet, sorry, I'm getting some really bad glare on this whiteboard. Obviously, I'm a whiteboard rookie here. So let me just go ahead and outline where those whole and half steps are, just so you can kind of see it in a different way. Between A and B, there's a whole step. B and C, we already underlined that. There's a half step. C and D, whole step. D and E, whole step. E and F, half step. F and G, whole step. G and A, where it repeats, whole step. Okay, great. Well, before we go into major scale construction, I want you to take a mental picture of this, and let's actually apply it to the guitar. And luckily enough, we have a string named the A string, right? So if we look at the A string, what's the first note of our musical alphabet? The next natural note is B. We know it's a whole step away. We also know that a whole step is 2 frets. That means the second fret of the A string is a B. Next natural note is a C. Between B and C, there is a natural half step. Remember, that's one of those critical pairs. So we go up 1 fret, a half step. Third fret of the A string is a C. The next note, D, is a whole step away from C, 2 more frets. E is the next note, another whole step away. E and F, critical pair, only a half step between the two, so 1 fret up. It's an F note. Another whole step to get to the next natural note, which is a G. And then this is where it repeats. From G to A, there's another whole step. Boom. So that's how we can apply the musical alphabet to our guitar. Now, the beautiful thing is that, yeah, we can use that on the A string, and it's convenient because it starts on A. We can apply that to any of the strings. We just have to adjust our starting point. If you want to do it on the G string, great. G, the next natural note is an A. It's a whole step away, 2 frets. Right? The second fret of the G string is an A. A, next natural note is a B. Up a whole step, 2 frets. Fourth fret of the G is a B. So on and so forth for any string. Cool. So that's how we can actually apply the musical alphabet to the guitar to get some results, to be able to find any note. Okay. Next step, the actual construction of a major scale. There's 2 pieces to this. One, we need to get the recipe. And we do that by starting on the C note. Okay, so I'm going to take the musical alphabet and I'm going to start on C and end on C. I'm not changing anything. Check this out. We've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Cool, right? Same thing. It's the musical alphabet. I'm just starting on C instead of A. Okay. Now, if we look at whole and half steps, what do we know? Let's think about what we actually know so far. Between E and F and B and C, there's a naturally occurring half step. Right there and right there. Cool, right? Just want to make sure everybody can see that. So let me write down the whole and half steps here. Whole step between C and D, whole step between D and E, half step between E and F, because that's one of our rules. F and G, whole step. G and A, whole step. A and B, whole step. B and C, half step. That right there is the recipe. I got that glare again. That right there is the recipe for a major scale. You might be saying, what recipe? This is the recipe. This arrangement of whole and half steps is the recipe for your major scale. How can that be? Here's what I want you to remember. I'll write it out just simply in steps. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. That is what you need to remember for a major scale. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Now let's apply it to the guitar. Okay. So that's all great and everything. Major scale, like what? Okay, major scale sounds, you've heard a major scale before. It sounds happy, it sounds great, it resolves, it's very musical. But let's just take that recipe and apply it to the guitar. Any string, let's pick the D string because we haven't used it yet. So if I'm following the major scale recipe, I'm going up a whole step, which is 2 frets. Another whole step, which is 2 frets. A half step, 1 fret. Whole step, 2 frets. Whole step, 2 frets. Whole step, 2 frets. half step, 1 fret. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, right? Pretty awesome stuff. You can construct a major scale you don't even have to know the note. Pick whatever note you want. 2nd fret of the low E string. What note is it? Who cares? Let's just execute the major scale pattern. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Major scale. It sounds musical. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's great for a single string, and it's great to start to understand those musical spaces and how whole steps and half steps interplay, and the fact that a major scale is just an arrangement of whole steps and half steps. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That's all well and good, and it works for C, and we saw how it played out on the D string, but how do you know what notes to play? How do you deduce the notes? Well, let's actually use D as an example. Okay, so we have our, sorry, this microphone keeps getting in the way. Maybe that's better. We have our major scale recipe right there. Let me go ahead and write the natural notes starting on D, ending on D. So we have D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. Right? Cool. Let's see where the whole and half steps lie. Okay, D to E, whole step. Cross-check that with the major scale formula. We need a whole step. We have a whole step. Life is good. E to F, half step. Uh-oh, we're already in trouble. We actually need a whole step there. How do we create a whole step? We introduce a sharp. To extend the space between E and F, we make an F sharp. That takes this whole step, or this half step, and creates a whole step. Awesome. We fixed that problem. We can carry on because we're on track for a major scale. F sharp to G, well, normally F to G is a whole step, but we bumped up the F by a half step. So F sharp to G is actually now a half step, which is great because that's what we need for a major scale. G to A, whole step, cool. A to B, whole step, cool. This is all checking out so far. B to C, half step, but we actually need a whole step. So again, let's go reach into our tool bag, grab a sharp, make the C a C sharp, which extends the interval now to a whole step, which is what we need for a major scale. And then C sharp to D, half step, boom. We have ourselves a major scale. That's how you can use that major scale recipe to create a major scale from any note you desire and actually know the notes that you're playing. All well and good. Now, I was going to go into chord matrix, but I want to actually take some time for questions right now. So right now, in the comments, go ahead and put #question and ask whatever question you may have about what was discussed so far. I feel like if I layer on the chord matrix right now, it could dilute that for some people that have questions simply about the musical alphabet and the major scale. So let's go ahead and I want to take some questions about the major scale and the musical alphabet, and we'll go ahead and I'll answer those, and then we'll move on to the chord matrix, which really unlocks quite a bit. The chord matrix and chord tonality are kind of one and the same, and then we have the cage system here towards the end. So let's go ahead and let me see what questions are coming in. Sorry, I wanted to check my questions here. All right, question. Oh, this one. So Beatrice, you have a question here. I'm going to actually get to that a little bit later. I want to stick on the topic. And Maddie, your question is actually a chord tonality question as well. So I want to stick on the topic of musical alphabet, major scale. If we have any questions on that, please let me know. If not, we can certainly go through and answer some other questions before we get to that. But I'd like to discuss the chord matrix kind of separately, because like I said, I don't want to muddy the waters so far. I want to make sure everybody's tracking, and if there are any questions on this beginning foundational stuff, I want to get those out of the way. Jonah just actually sent me some questions. Awesome. All right. Brian S. says, chord matrices are cool, but what is the practical application of the knowledge? I'm still a bit confused on minor chord sequencing. Actually, a lot of these questions, a lot of these questions have to do with the chord matrix. So maybe I'm just going to dig right into the chord matrix, and I'll just go ahead and hit the questions, and I think I'll cover the chord matrix and these questions all at once. How about that? 2 birds, 1 stone, 2 birds, 1 seed. However you look at it, you know, you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You can feed 2 birds with 1 seed. Wherever your head's at, pick that one. We'll do that. Okay, so let's dive into the chord matrix. Sorry, I'm like looking at 3 different comment screens, so sometimes I look over here and I go totally blank. My brain hasn't short-circuited. I'm just processing a couple of different windows here. So let's dive into. So this first question comes from Brian S., and he says, chord matrices are cool, but what is the practical application of the knowledge? Well, let's start with a chord matrix. Okay, what is a chord matrix? First, before I draw anything out, because I don't want to just start spewing notes at everyone, I want to discuss what the chord matrix is. The chord matrix is a visual representation of a major scale and the chords that are derived from that major scale, meaning they're all in the same key. So the chord matrix essentially does this. The chord matrix allows us to see a key, the major scale of that key, and the chords contained within that key. There are exceptions, but we're going to set those exceptions aside. We have to learn the rule first before we can break it. Okay, and there's no sense in breaking the rule if you don't know that you're breaking it, because then it's not any fun. It's fun to break rules, but if you don't know the rules, you don't know when you're breaking it, hence you can't have any rebel fun. We need to have rebel fun, so we need to understand the rules, okay? I'm really on fire today. So let's discuss the chord matrix. Okay, like I said, I'm going to actually write it out just as I discussed it. So we're going to look at the key of C major. Okay, key of C major. This microphone out of the way. I'm kind of talking at it over here. So hopefully, if my sound goes low, just let me know in the comments and I can fix it. So key of C major. What do we need for the chord matrix? Well, let's start with the major scale. And I picked C because it's friendly. We don't have any sharps. We don't have any flats. We have the major scale recipe. It's all right there in front of us, right? So we start on C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. You all see that okay? Cool. I was running out of room there towards the end. So great. We know that this is a major scale. We know that the whole and half steps are all in order. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. Step 1 towards creating a chord matrix, identify your key and write out that major scale. What we need for the chord matrix are the notes that create the chord. How do we get those notes? Well, we're going to have 3 rows in our chord matrix. We're going to have row that's based on the first degree of the scale. We're going to have a row that's based on the 3rd degree of the scale. You see that okay? And we're going to have a row that's based on the 5th degree of the scale. Okay? So let's just take this row by row. Now, we've created the major scale once. We don't need to do it again. All the information contained in these subsequent rows will be pulled from row number 1. So we're not adding any other sharps. We're not adding any other flats. We're not altering this at all. We're using the same information. Tapping on it feels official, so I'm going to tap on it. So this next row is based on the 3rd degree. So all we're going to do is look at the 3rd degree. So in the key of C, that's E. And we're going to say, okay, I'm going to start on E, and I'm going to end on E. I'm going to replicate all these notes. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. That's all we have to do. It's kind of like almost like paint by number in a weird way. So we have our second row of the chord matrix, which again is based on the 3rd degree. 3rd degree is E, start on E, end on E. Not any new notes there, just using the same information. Our final row is based on the 5th degree, and that's a G. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to start on G. We're not adding any new notes, no sharps, no flats. We're taking the same information from row 1. We're just starting in a different place. Starting on G, going to A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Got a little wonky there towards the end, but I think you get the idea. Great. So this is our chord matrix. What on earth does this tell us? It looks like a bunch of notes. It is a bunch of notes. This here is one of the most useful things you'll learn in the Fretboard Wizard course because it will unlock improvising, it will unlock chord construction, it will unlock transposition, it will unlock finding chords by ear, it will unlock a number of things. Let me tell you how to read this. So we've designed the chord matrix, identified the key, major scale, created our rows based on the 1st degree, the 3rd degree, and the 5th degree. We're not adding any new notes. We're taking information from row number 1 and just extrapolating it for these other rows. Now I want you to look at this in terms of columns. Okay? And all of this is located for those that, if you're trying to take actual notes, all of this is located in the Fretboard Wizard materials. If you look at the course materials within the Fretboard Wizard course, you can click on it, and there's a follow-along worksheet. This exact thing is in that worksheet. So please know that. Don't feel like you have to write all this down. If writing it down helps you, please do so. But by no means do you have to, rapidly write all this down and try and understand it right now. The same information is in the Fretboard Wizard worksheet, which again is in the course materials of the course. Okay, so we have our chord matrix. It's now in columns, and I want you to just label these columns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it repeats. That's a 7. Sorry, that's a really wonky 7. Let's do that again. There we go. And then it repeats at 1 again. Now I know, because of theory principles and chord tonality, I know this. Each of these columns represent the 3 notes contained in each of the chords based on each of these scale degrees. Each of these scale degrees, each of these scale notes have a coinciding chord. These are the notes contained in the chord. To create a chord, you need 3 notes. We have those 3 notes because of the chord matrix, right? So I know that this first note in the key of C is a C. And I know that the first chord is going to contain a C, an E, and a G note. And I know that chord is going to be a C major. I'll get to why I know that in a little bit. Let me continue on down the line. I want to pique your interest and your curiosity. The next note in the C scale is a D. Because of the chord matrix, I know that there's a chord based on that D note, and I know that the notes contained within that chord are D, F, and A. And I know, because of something you're about to learn, that that indeed is a D minor. Cool, let's keep going. This is getting exciting. The next note is an E, and I know that there's a chord based on that E, and I know it contains 3 notes, and the chord matrix tells me those 3 notes. And I know for a fact, that I'll tell you in a little bit, that this is an E minor. The next note is an F. I know there's 3 notes in that chord, and I know because of things that I'm about to tell you that it's an F major. G, the next note in the C scale, has a chord attached to it that contains 3 notes. We know that because of the chord matrix, G major. The same is true for the next note. Of course, it's an A. It's A minor. The next note is a B. This is a weird one. It's a weird one. It's a weird one. I know that there's a chord based on the B, and I know that it contains the notes B, D, and F within the key of C major. And I know for a fact that that's a B diminished. I hate the diminished chord. I don't hate it. It's a love-hate relationship. I'll explain what diminished is here in a second. And then it repeats again. So, Brian, to answer your question right now, the chord matrix tells me a number of things. It tells me the coinciding chords from the C major scale in the key of C. C major, key of C. I'm using those interchangeably. So it tells me the chords within the key of C major. It tells me the tonality of those chords within the key of C major. That's a lot of information. Not only does it tell me the chords and their tonalities, it tells me the notes contained within those chords, which actually hints at how you improvise and play notes that make sense over a certain chord from the C major scale. That we'll probably cover in the next Fretboard Wizard check-in. We'll probably hit that a little bit on December 2nd and probably the final wrap-up December 16th. I'll get those dates to you towards the end of today. So the chord matrix really does unlock a lot of information, but I really want to focus on the chords themselves right now. Because I'm trying not to get ahead of myself here. So far we have, I want to go back to Brian's question. Chord matrices are cool, but what is the practical application of the knowledge? The practical application is this. I can take a universal rule from this. That's why I introduced these numbers here. I know that in any major key, I will encounter on the first degree of that scale a major chord. I know in any major key on the second degree of the scale, I will encounter a corresponding minor chord. The third degree, a corresponding minor chord. Fourth degree, a major chord. Fifth degree, a major chord, so on and so forth, as this matrix tells us. So essentially, the Nashville number system is derived directly from the chord matrix, meaning that in any major key, and if you construct any chord matrix out of any major key, you will get a chord based on the first degree, that's a major, a chord based on the second degree, it's a minor, a chord based on the third degree, that's a minor, chord based on the fourth degree, major, fifth degree major, sixth degree minor, seventh degree diminished. That is extremely powerful because it leads to transposition, it leads to understanding of the Nashville number system, meaning you can say, hey team of fellow jammers and guitar geeks, I want to play this song in the key of C, and it goes 1 4 5. 1 4 5. You start playing it, you think, oh wait. I actually want to change it to the key of D. It's still a 1 4 5 in the key of D. We just fill in the blanks with different chords. It cleans up the communication, right? If you say, okay guys, I want to play this in the key of C, it goes C, F, G. You start playing, think, oh no, actually let's change it to the key of D. It goes D, G, A. Immediately that's confusing. We can latch on to 1 4 5, and if we understand the workings of the chord matrix, we can apply that to any key in any scenario. So I hope that expands the practical application of the chord matrix. In terms of the chordal knowledge you get, you're basically understanding the naturally occurring chords in any key, in any major key. In this case, we used C major as an example. Not only that, you're understanding that each of those chords contains 3 notes. So when you look at improvisation, you know that you'll have 3 notes to choose from if the song stays on a C chord and you want to improvise. These are your notes that you can hover around that will make sense, that will be quote-unquote correct, the right notes. You know, one of the big questions I always get is, how do I know how to play the right notes when I'm playing a solo? The chord matrix actually unlocks that. Okay. Hopefully that helps, Brian. If it doesn't, let me know in the comments. I'm going to move on to the next question from Chuck S. He says, I'm still a bit confused on minor chord sequencing. In the key of C, with A minor as the relative minor, if someone says they're going to play 1 5 6 in the key of A minor, which chords would that be? This is a really, okay, this brings up an enormously huge confusion point, and for good reason, okay? Every major key has a relative minor. The relative minor means that it contains the same exact notes. It's just that the focal point is different. Let me explain with the guitar, because I think hearing it actually helps lock in why it can be confusing. So if we look at C major, now let me just play 1 octave of a C major scale. Right? That's awesome, right? C major. The relative minor is A minor, it contains the same exact notes, but the focal point is different. Okay, so let me play A minor now. Whoops, wrong scale tone. Okay, I'm starting on an A and I'm ending on an A. Sounds totally different. C major, A minor. Totally different. Same notes. Same exact notes. And I'll illustrate. I'll actually write it out. So C major. Get my marker official here. C major we know is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Quick little pro tip. If you have any major scale, if you look at the 6th degree, that's the relative minor. Meaning, if I start on A, that's the major, that's the relative minor. My writing is really crummy and I apologize. Same notes, different result. You heard it. That first scale I was playing started on C, ended on C. It sounded happy. It sounded full of glee, if you will. The second scale I was playing started on A, ended on A, and it sounded dark. It sounded sad. It sounded brooding. The same notes. There's not any difference in the notes. The difference is the context and where the notes resolve, where the notes pull to. Major, it pulls to a C. It sounds happy. The whole steps and half steps arrangement actually elicit that feeling. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. The arrangement of whole and half steps in a minor scale is different. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. Because of the arrangement of the notes and the corresponding arrangement of whole and half steps, you're getting a different feeling from the scale, even though it contains the same notes. So back to the question, to be specific here, let me go back. Chuck S. says this: I'm still a bit confused on minor chord sequencing. In the key of C with A minor as the relative minor. If someone says they're going to play 1, 5, 6 in the key of A minor, which chords would that be? This is where the confusion point lies, and this is where I'm going to encourage you to focus your efforts on the simple thing, the easiest thing to remember. I would prefer if you learned everything in relation to a major scale and understand that there's a relative minor. Because what it does is it limits the things that you have to remember. But they're still useful, because from a major scale you can deduce the relative minor. What Chuck is asking here is it's a little bit of semantics, because you can talk about one thing in one way and mean the same thing, but talk about it in a different way as well. If somebody announces, we're playing this in the key of A minor, and it's a 1, 5, 6, I would assume that they're referring to a chord matrix in the key of A minor, meaning you'd have the 1 chord being an A minor, the 5 chord, 2, 3, 4, 5, being an E minor, and the 6 chord being an F major. Okay, because the crucial piece when you're ever announcing a chord progression, you do so in the following fashion. You announce the key first. That gives a reference point for everybody. Then you announced, if you're using the Nashville number system, you announce the numerical value of the chords, just like Chuck said in his question. So if somebody says, hey, key of A minor, 1, 5, 6, I'm thinking key of A minor, chord matrix, 1, 5, 6. If somebody says, we're going to play this in the key of C, and it's a 1, 5, 6, that means something entirely different, because now I'm talking about C major. I hope that clears things up, Chuck. It can be a little bit confusing because we're talking about the same thing in different, just coming from a different angle, which is exactly why within the Fretboard Wizard course, and whenever I teach this to anyone, I encourage them to just focus on the major end of the spectrum. because it limits what we have to remember, not in a way to dumb it down. I'm not saying don't remember things. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying limit what you remember, limit what you have to recall, but make those things that you do recall extremely powerful. If you focus your efforts on truly understanding a major chord matrix, you can always deduce the minor, the relative minor, because you are looking at the same thing. You just have to start on the 6th degree. That's an awesome question, Chuck, and I'm glad that you asked it. So Dave M asked a question. This is actually a really quick one. Dave M asks a question. Do you have any additional songs for practicing identifying the key and chords? Your examples are good because they supply the correct answer. Yes, you can actually do kind of some homework here. Meaning, within Fretboard Wizard, you have a quiz that helps you know the correct answer. But there's a way you can actually do this on your own with songs that you like, with songs that you want to play, with songs that you want to figure out. I want you to pick a song that you enjoy, whatever song that is. And I want you to try and figure it out by ear, figure out the key by ear. Once you feel like you're pretty confident in your answer, I want you to then look up the chords for that particular song. And I want you to look at the chord that the song starts on and the chord that the song ends on. Generally speaking, they'll be the same. And you can double check your answers there. This way you can do it with a song that you like. For example, if I'm working on a song, Long Journey Home, I'm listening to it and I'm like, okay, I think it's in C. I would then go to the Google machine and I would say Long Journey Home, chords, look it up, and see if I can find the exact recorded version. See, this is where the variation comes in because there are going to be other versions out there. So this isn't a totally foolproof way, but it's a great way to try this on your own and build confidence. Look for an exact recording saying, these lyrics and chords were taken off of X recording. Go ahead and look at it and see what the song starts on, see what the song ends on, and double check your hunch, right? If it says starts on C, ends on C, boom, you're on your way. So that's a way that you can actually reference and do some kind of self-induced homework, if you will, that maybe will more align with your musical taste. You'll notice that there's a lot of references in the Fretboard Wizard course to bluegrass and folk. That's because, generally speaking, that particular genre of music lends itself well to ear training and some commonly recognized patterns of song form, etc. Also, there's some other instruments which may make things a little tougher, but it actually will strengthen your ear training. So keep that in mind. That's just a nice way to do some homework on that. Jonas says, lots of questions asking you to define what a diminished chord is. I'll get to that because Maddie D asks, what exactly is diminished? Let me explain. Let me go back to our friendly chord matrix here. And remember I said that B chord, the chord based on the 7th degree, is diminished. Oh, the microphone's in the way again. Come on, Tone, get it together. There we go. Right? It's based on, the chord based on the 7th degree is diminished. Well, okay, that's great. We understand major, we understand minor. Diminished. Help. Where did this chord come from and why does it exist? We'll get to those answers, but first we need to look at major and minor to figure out why diminished is here. So we can understand the tonality of a chord based on the notes contained within it. If we look at the spacing, right? Remember whole and half steps? We talked about it in the musical alphabet. We talked about it the major scale construction. Well, we're going to talk about it again, just in a different form. A major chord will consist of the following intervals, spaces in between notes. We have two. We have the first space between the row 1 and row 3, right? The distance between C and E. So we have C to D, that's a whole step. D to E, that's a whole step. So we have 2 steps between C and E. The next note is a G. Okay, E to F, that's a naturally occurring half step. And then F to G is a whole step. So we have 1.5 steps there. 2 steps, 1.5 steps. Let's create a different name for that. Okay, so 2 steps is what we'll call a major third. 1.5 steps is what we'll call a minor third. And again, so for those of you who maybe are frantically taking notes, there is a resource, a Fretboard Wizard workbook, follow-along workbook that goes in the course materials. So as you log into the Fretboard Wizard course, click on course materials, you can download the workbook, and it has this exact thing written out. So I don't want you to think that you're missing out or feeling like you're like, oh my gosh, I need to get this now. You can take some time with this, marinate with it for a little bit. So we took that 2-step interval and we said, let's call it a major third. 1.5 step interval, we called it a minor third. So a major chord is a major third followed by a minor third. Easy enough. Let's look at D minor. Do the same analysis. We have D, F, and A. The distance between D and F, D to E is a whole step, E to F is a half step. That's 1.5 steps. Well, we know that 1.5 steps is a minor third. Cool. The distance between F and A. F to G is a whole step. G to A is a whole step. That's 2 steps. We also know that to be a major third. You're thinking, okay, wait a minute. 2 steps, 1.5 steps, okay. 1.5 steps, 2 steps, that equals the same thing. But it's the order in which they occur that tips us off to the tonality of the chord. Because a minor chord is simply the inverse of a major. If a major chord is a major third followed by a minor chord is a minor third followed by a major third. Okay? And that accounts for huge tonality difference. It seems like such a small shift, but that subtle shift makes one chord happy and one chord sad. It's pretty powerful stuff when you start to realize that this center row holds the key. I shouldn't use that word. This center row holds the power to change a chord's tonality, meaning that if I took this E and flatted it, I'd make a major chord minor. If I took this F and a D minor chord and sharped it, I would make a minor chord a major. But let's get to the diminished. I haven't forgotten the question. So we have a major chord, we have a minor chord, and then diminished shows up, and you're like, hey, diminished, who the hell invited you to the party, and why are you here? Because major makes sense, minor makes sense. What is your purpose? Well, let's first look at the contents of a diminished chord. Let's do the same analysis. I'll do it down here because I'm running out of room. So we know that the B is diminished, and we know that it contains the notes B, D, and F. Let's analyze what's going on here. Distance between B and D. B to C is a half step. C to D is a whole step. That's 1.5 steps. Or a minor third. Okay, cool. D to E, we're going on to the next piece of the chord. D to E is a whole step. E to F is a half step. This is the first occurrence where we have 1.5 steps, another minor third. So on paper, the diminished chord exists because it's not major, nor is it minor. Because it lacks the presence of a major third. A major chord is a major third followed by a minor third. A minor chord is a minor third followed by a major third. A diminished chord is a minor third stacked on top of a minor third. Okay, makes sense on paper. What's its purpose? How often do you see a diminished chord in playing? Not often. And honestly, when I find a diminished chord, I try and avoid it at all costs. If I'm being totally honest, I drop my marker. So let's look at this. I'm going to go through the triads, basically what the matrix says. So we have C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished. It's not a comfortable chord, and it's not meant to be a comfortable chord. Okay? B diminished. Why? Because it leads to a C. it almost makes the C that much more triumphant. It creates tension, right? If I stop, I'm going to play those triads again, and I won't talk, I won't yap through it. I'm going to actually just stop on the B diminished. And I want you to recognize the internal feeling that you have, okay? Check this out. How badly do you want me to just finish, right? That's the purpose of the diminished. The purpose is to create tension so that you can resolve it. But there's a detour that we must take here. Remember I said before we started even discussing diminished how much I don't like diminished and how much I avoid it at all costs? I'll replace the diminished chord 99.9% of the time. I don't think in diminished chords. I don't want to think in diminished chords. They exist from a theoretical paper and pencil standpoint. And that's good because it helps us understand a key, but we can also, remember I said, understand the rules so you can break them? Well, let's go ahead and break them. I want you to just listen to the two chords that I'm about to play. I'm going to play a B diminished again. Let's see if I can get there. B diminished. And then I'm going to play another chord. I'll play B diminished again. I'm going to play another chord. Play a B diminished again. I'll play a G7. One more time. I can replace the diminished chord with what's called the dominant 5 chord, G7. And I can do this because they contain the same notes. It's one of the beautiful things about knowing the rules is we're actually not even breaking the rules. It's not even as fun as I set it up to be. We're not breaking the rules. We're just bending things to, well, I'm bending things to fit with my brain. I think diminished chords definitely serve their purpose. You heard the purpose. It's a leading chord. It leads to a resolve. It creates tension. But when I see B diminished, I even struggle to find it on the fretboard. Like right now, I have to go through the triads and land on a B diminished because it's sheerly muscle memory. But I can play a G7 because I'm just replacing it, right? So I can replace any chord based on the 7th degree of a major scale, which happens to be always a diminished chord, with the 5th degree chord, but I have to add the 7th, right? I have to flat the root and add it to the chord because that creates the same triad that pops up in the diminished. That's a little bit, it's a little in the weeds, but I just want you to know that the reason I kind of punch and kick at the diminished chord is because I like everything to be black or white, major or minor. And when I see the diminished show up, it kind of tweaks me out. So I, at all costs, try and replace it when I can. But it does serve a purpose. It does have an actual purpose, and that is that tension creator right before the resolve. Think of a movie. Think of a horror movie. Right before the final girl opens the door that the monster's behind. Usually that's when a diminished chord happens because it gives you this unsettled sense. It's a musical tool to evoke an emotion. A really good one at that, actually. Let me get to a couple more questions. Sorry, some of these questions, I'm taking a little bit longer on these questions because I need to present the context to you so that you can kind of understand why the question's being asked and then see the purpose. So forgive me if I get into the weeds a little bit. I just want to try and offer the best explanation that I can to folks in various points of the program, whether you're just starting and still on the foundational 5 or are moving on through. Ed G asks a question that relates. He says, so the dominant 5 chord is the 5 chord of the scale as a 7th? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's correct. So you can take any diminished chord in any major key, look to the 5th degree, the chord based on that 5th degree, and create a dominant chord, meaning add the flat 7 of that chord. Boom, you have yourself a replacement for the diminished chord. All right. Let's see. I'm just trying to look through a couple of questions here. Nolan S. says this: do you have any tips for finding the name of notes faster or easier? For me, I really rely heavily on the dots on the player's side. What I mean by that is that the dots that actually face you as the player, those might not even be coming through very well. So I have one on the 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th fret, 9th fret, and then 12th fret. And to me, I really rely on those dots and the low E string. If I could give any recommendation to anybody trying to learn the notes on the fretboard in a faster, more efficient way, spend time on the low E string and know it intimately. I mean, not like oh, the E string feels so good. I mean, know the positions of the notes just off the top of your head. So I know that the 3rd dot on the low E string is a G. 5th dot's an A. 7th dot's a B. Actually, it's 3, 5, and 7 because 9 is a C sharp. Scratch that. So 3, G, 5, A, and then 7th fret is a B. And the reason I say spend your time on the low E string is because you can deduce notes of the same name by the patterns that you'll learn there's a course within Tony's Acoustic Challenge entitled Foundations of Fretboard Navigation. And that will show you some very quick and easy patterns that actually will allow you to limit the notes that you remember, but get the most out of those notes. And that's really a challenge. I think a lot of times the preconceived notion is I have to memorize all of these things, and I have to commit all this stuff to memory. And I'm saying, please don't fall for that trap. What I'm saying is commit to memory the most potent, smallest pieces of knowledge that will allow you to deduce other things. Which is why I say, for those learning notes on the fretboard, spend your time really getting to know the low E string. Because through patterns, you can find a note on the D string and then the high E string. That's 3 notes for the price of 1. And actually, there's a pattern based on the D string, so you can get an additional note out of that. That's 4 notes for the price. Well, I guess that's 3 notes for the price of 1. So that's what I mean by limiting what you remember to the most powerful pieces of knowledge. Okay. So keep that in mind as you learn notes. Don't try and remember every little thing, which is why I want you to focus on the natural notes. Don't get tied up with the sharps and the flats. Those are there. Whenever there's a whole step, there's a note in between those 2 frets. That's a sharp or a flat, depending on whatever key you're in. All right, Beatrice says this: in the real-life quiz for finding chords by ear, some of the answers accepted the notes by themselves, and some wanted the sharp/flat symbols. Is there a way that the quiz would allow us to know or write the additional info? Unfortunately, the way the quiz setup is, there is not. But I will say this: when you're looking for chords in a song and you're identifying them, you write out that major scale, write out that chord matrix, and in doing so, whenever you add a sharp or whenever you add a flat, make sure that's contained within your answer, because it's solely based on the key itself, meaning it will contain the sharps or the flats. So sorry if that's a little misleading. There's some limitations in the quiz software, especially using it for music and adding the sharp or the lowercase b. So Ken P. asks a great question about the chord matrix. Why degrees 1, 3, and 5? Any significance to the other degrees? Yes, absolutely. Each degree has its significance, and each degree plays its role in the chord matrix. The reason I am soloing out degrees 1, 3, and 5 is because that is what gives us the basis for the chord matrix. I'm going to actually erase this current one, and I'm just going to kind of show you why I solo out 1, 3, and 5. These are really great questions, everyone. I want to thank you for asking these questions. This can feel like a lot of information. It may very well feel like a lot of information. But I want to tell you this. A lot of times with theory, and I've done this too. I remember taking a college class about theory. And I remember getting a concept and thinking, is that it? And wanting to make it more difficult. I'm not saying anybody's making it more difficult. I'm sharing my story with you because I feel like we all fight this tendency. When there's a concept presented and it's simple, our brains are like, nope, it can't be that simple. I not processing, short circuit. It's not that simple. A lot of times it is that simple. We just need to back up. A lot of times we're taking the view of all of music theory, and I'm saying let's just focus in on these vital pieces because they do connect. And once you see their connection, you start to see the bigger picture in a much more manageable way. So Ken asked, why degrees 1, 3, and 5? Well, degrees 1, 3, and 5 allow us to actually construct the chord matrix. Okay? My whiteboard positioning. I'm getting better. So again, constructing a chord matrix, we need to define the key, C, and we need to write out that key's major scale. Okay. So Ken asks, why 1, 3, and 5? Quite simply, that allows us to create the structure of the chord matrix. That's it. That's the only reason. If I said, 1, 3, and 5, and then the next one is 2, 4, and 6, it's a lot of numbers, it's a lot of processing. If we limit what we need to remember to the essential pieces that allow us to extrapolate the rest of the information, then it actually allows us to have quicker recall of the concepts and still actually get the full concept. Meaning, we focus on 1, 3, and 5 because that gives us the bones of the chord matrix. Everything else is fill in the blank. Once I have the scale and I take down the first degree, obviously that's written out with the scale, the third and the fifth, that allows us to write the rest of the chord matrix. And I don't even have to think about it. I don't even have to think major, minor, nothing. Whole step, half step, nothing. All I'm saying is cool. Start on E, extrapolate. Apparently I like that word today. Real data mine today. C, D, E. And then G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's the only reason we're focusing on 1, 3, and 5 is just because it allows us to actually construct the matrix in a quick and easy fashion without any brain power. And again, I'm not saying, cavemanitize music theory, but I'm also saying cavemanitize. Cavemanitize? Yeah, make it like a caveman. I'm not saying be dumb about music theory. I'm saying just know what you're remembering and know that it allows you and it gives you the power to deduce the other things, the other pieces, the other concepts. All right. Ooh, JC says this. I love this. Question. We really went long on questions here. I'm sorry, everybody, but these are really great questions, and I just simply can't ignore them. I do have details on the giveaway that I want to share with you here in a moment, but we'll get there after JC's question. JC says this: is the chord matrix extendable to sevenths, ninths, etc., etc.? Are there possible pitfalls? Yes. Yes to both of your questions, all three. You can certainly extend the chord matrix. In fact, a lot of times, and this is how I learned it in school, you can take the seventh degree, right, the B, seventh degree, and add that as a fourth row of the chord matrix. But I ask why. I think in certain settings, like in a jazz setting when you're looking at extended chords and things like that, that's very applicable. But in terms of understanding the absolute basics, I like to stick to major, minor, and their position in relation to the scale. And all you need for a chord is 3 notes. You cannot have a 2-note chord. A two-note chord is simply an interval. It's a distance between 2 notes, i.e. like a power chord. A lot of times people refer to power chords. Well, a power chord doesn't contain the third. A power chord is not major or minor. A power chord is simply the interval of the first to the fifth. So power chords are actually a really useful tool. However, they're not a true chord because they're not major or minor. The simple 3-row chord matrix gives you the basic knowledge of a chord and its naturally occurring tonality within the key. You can certainly extend it and add the 7th degree. But I don't think that's necessary for understanding the core principle. I think it's good to know that the option exists. I think it's good to know that it is useful in certain aspects. But in terms of understanding the basics of chord tonality and how chords function within a key, adding that extra row of the chord matrix introduces a lot of confusion, which is why I don't discuss it. And a lot of times I treat chord extensions separately from the chord matrix, meaning I keep the chord matrix 3 rows, and I know that any chord that's a suspended chord, sus4, add 9, 7, I know that it contains an additional note, right? Just like I said, you can create a dominant 7 chord out of the 5th degree by adding the flat 7. I know that if it says G7 on my chord sheet, it means it's those 3 basic notes plus another note. I know that if it's C add 9 on my chord sheet, I know that it's a C, an E, and a G, and I know that it also contains a D because I'm adding the 9th degree. Okay. I know that if, and the same is true for all the other chords, like suspended chord, all those other chord extensions. We have those base 3 notes. We're simply adding another note. So I treat them very separate. I lost the cap to my marker. That's sad because it's going to dry out. Anyways, I'll figure that out at a later date and time. So that's a great question, JC, and I think it's a very valid question in that, yes, it exists. I'm not going to deny its existence. I think it muddies the waters when we're talking about basic chord construction, basic chord tonality. All I want you to know is that, yes, you can create monster chord matrices if you want to, but I think the benefit is lost because you lose touch with those 3 basic notes and the tonality. So very, very, very great stuff. Good questions, everybody. We did sufficiently discuss chord tonality and chord matrices. Now, I just noticed Ed G said, "Tone, you lost me," and I'm actually looking. Tommy, outside the matrix. Oh, we were talking about the flat 7 chord. So again, there's a lot of folks at various points within the Fretboard Wizard course, and a lot of these questions I got into the weeds. If you're sitting there and you're thinking, what just happened? We were talking about dominant 7s and flat this and sharp that. If you don't have that context yet, it's totally okay. There's no required checkpoint right now, right? We're discussing this. This is one of the beautiful things about Fretboard Wizard, and more importantly, what I really like about doing these live things is that you might be sitting there and you might be thinking, I was with him on musical alphabet. I was with him on major scale construction. And you know what? I was even with him when he started talking about the chord matrix. I got the bones of it. But then we went a little bit past. You're not behind. You're not losing information. You're not, behind the curve. You simply don't have the context for that yet, and that's okay. And that's part of this discussion. This discussion is, one of my concerns initially about the Fretboard Wizard lives was that lives, not lies, lives was that I didn't want to be talking. I didn't want this to become highbrow music theory discussion because that's the pitfall. Music theory. Check the end of your marker for the cap, Tony. It's actually on the floor. I just saw it roll away. Music theory is so often lumped into jazz and academia. It doesn't have to be that way. It's very applicable to the everyday folk singer, the everyday guitar geek that just wants to simply jam with somebody and be confident that the notes that they're playing make sense, or be confident that, hey, I can listen to a song and I might not get it the first try, but I'll be able to figure out the chords by process of elimination. And when you get to that module in the Fretboard Wizard course, you'll see kind of how the chord matrix ties in. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, wow, some of this stuff really resonated, some of the stuff was not, I don't know what he's talking about. It's okay. It's just engaging in a discussion, and the only way to learn is to be exposed to it, right? You might not get it right now, and it might not even cross your radar until a year from now. And that's totally fine, but the seed's been planted, okay? So if the full comprehension doesn't happen right here, right now, don't take that as a negative. Just take it as, okay, I got reinforcement on what I thought I knew. I got some questions answered, and when that stuff comes up down the road, I'll at least have heard the word before, and I can enter that realm then. So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page with that. It's not a race to discover all things music theory. It's a race to discover the things that are applicable to you on your guitar journey right now. If you've just started and you're taking Fretboard Wizard, you start to see where chords come from and why they make sense together. That's huge. Do dominant sevenths matter at that point? No. And I don't even want you to pay attention to them at that point. Just know that musical alphabet, constructing a major scale, and just seeing where chords come from is a huge leg up on your guitar journey. And for those of you that maybe are coming back to the guitar after a while and are thinking, man, I used to play this stuff, I didn't even think about it, but now I'm starting to think about why it makes sense, or why a solo makes sense, or what notes to choose in a solo. Fretboard Wizard is totally applicable to your journey as well, because you're asking the questions, and Fretboard Wizard will teach you the answers to those questions. It's all about context and what you're bringing to. So you can always learn more. But just my recommendation is to learn to where you're at in your journey, what makes sense to you right now. The other stuff will come with time. It's not a race. It's a marathon. It's a fun. It's called a journey for a reason. I know that's cliche. Now Sal has, I think for the 7th time, typed in circle of fifths. And I agree. I think the circle of fifths is a very powerful tool. However, I think one of the biggest problems is that the circle of fifths presents everything all at once. And what I would recommend, and the way that I learned, and I'm not saying it's the right way, I'm saying that it's a way that I learned that made sense to me, that seemed very sequential, is I like to focus on a single key. And I like to understand those universal rules, the musical alphabet, the arrangement of whole and half steps for a major scale, the chord tonality and how that corresponds to a major key. I like to understand that, and then I encourage people to look at the circle of fifths, because then you look at it through the right glasses with the right focus. Whereas if we start with the circle of fifths, it's a lot of information all at once, and I think it can be discouraging. Sal said 2 times. Sorry, Sal. But yes, the circle of fifths connects a lot of these dots. I will not disagree with that. And I think the circle of fifths is an incredibly valuable tool into seeing how all of this connects. But I don't start with it, and I actually don't even teach it in Fretboard Wizard, because once you understand it on an individual key basis, and more importantly, the universal rules, and you can apply them to each key, then you look at the circle of fifths, and it's like stadium light bulb moments. All of a sudden, you're like, oh my gosh, that's how the relative minor works. That's how these chords make sense in this key also. So I totally agree, Sal, and I'm just poking fun at you about the 7 times. I'm looking at comments, and I'm looking at the screen, so it just caught my eye a couple of times. But I appreciate you bringing that up, Sal, because that's such a frequently asked question. Tony, where's the circle of fifths? Tony, where's the circle of fifths? Why don't you just teach this through the circle of fifths viewpoint? The reason is because I initially learned it through the circle of fifths, and I found it to be a long road to making the connection. Whereas if I just isolated a single key and then I looked at the circle of fifths, rather isolated a single key and understood the universal rules and then looked at the circle of fifths, to me it clicked. And we all learn in different ways. I'm not saying my way is the best. Again, I just am saying that this is it's a great visual representation of how powerful this information is. Excuse me. I want to get to a couple of non-questions right now. I want to actually tell you some details about the upcoming giveaway, and I might stick on till about 12:30. I feel like there's been some really great questions, some awesome discussion, and I really am enjoying this discussion. So please fire away if you have questions. #question. I'll get to what I can, but I do want to announce some of the details of the giveaway. And you might be sitting there thinking, what giveaway? I haven't heard about a giveaway. As a Fretboard Wizard participant, you have the chance to win a Waterloo guitar, WL12 or WL14. I'll make the call on game day. But speaking of game day, what do you have to do to win it? you have to submit a Fretboard Wizard declaration, which is a video of you explaining your experience in Fretboard Wizard. A short video. This doesn't have to be long. In fact, there's some great examples within the forum already. All you have to do is by, hold on, December 15th at 5 p.m., have posted your Fretboard Wizard declaration, which is simply you saying, hey, my name's Tony, and I'm a Fretboard Wizard. Before at Fretboard Wizard, I had some apprehensions because I wasn't sure if this was for me. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to apply this. But after Fretboard Wizard, holy smokes, I was able to do this, that, and the other thing, and this is my biggest light bulb moment. Submit that video by December 15th at 5 p.m. because the following day, December 16th, we'll be doing a live wrap-up party, and I'll be giving away a Waterloo WL 12 or 14 to one lucky winner. Because everybody that submits a Fretboard Wizard declaration by December 15th at 5 p.m., I'll be entering their names into a raffle, a drawing, and I'll be picking one lucky winner from those who have submitted their Fretboard Wizard declaration. You might be thinking to yourself, like Cross said at the beginning, hey, this is my 4th time through. I've submitted a declaration already. I'm sorry, but you'll have to submit another declaration. Each time through Fretboard Wizard, you can accumulate and get some more information under your belt. So I would appreciate another declaration to enter you into this round's giveaway. And more importantly, the reason I ask you to do that is because these Fretboard Wizard declarations serve three purposes. One, it enters you into the giveaway, which is awesome. Let's just get that out of the way first. The second piece is that it allows you to reflect on your journey through Fretboard Wizard and really think about what you learned and what clicked for you this time. It could be your 4th time and maybe you had a new discovery. That's awesome, and you need to celebrate that. That's crucial. We need to celebrate those small wins. And the third reason why those declarations are important is because it helps inspire someone who might be on the fence about Fretboard Wizard. It helps them decide whether or not Fretboard Wizard is truly for them. Because I truly believe that the Fretboard Wizard course is one of those courses that every single guitarist needs to go through. Because it takes the pitfalls of music theory that I went through in learning it, and it removes those. So you can get a little bit of a faster track to the things you'll actually use in and out on a daily basis with your guitar. So that's the scoop on the giveaway. Again, submit your Fretboard Wizard declaration video by December 15th at 5 p.m. I'll announce the winner December 16th on our live wrap-up party, which I'll be answering questions then as well. And let's see. So Cal Ian says, take your time, Tony. This is really a great session. I appreciate that feedback a lot. Sometimes when I'm answering these questions, I feel like I can get in the weeds, but again, I do this to bring up the vocabulary. I do this to plant the seeds for those that may not have been exposed to it yet. So I definitely... Melanie just asked a really pertinent question. Melanie says this, hey, do we have a timeline for Fretboard Wizard, or can we take our time? Please take your time. You can do the Fretboard Wizard on your own pace. If by December 15th, you're like, hey, I've been taking Fretboard Wizard. I'm still in the foundational 5. I'm really digging it. I'm making some connections. Can I submit a declaration? 100%. Yes, absolutely you can. Please do. There is no reason for you to try and rush through this information. Quite simply, I wouldn't advise it. I would take it at your own pace, and I would just, again, when you run into something that seems over your head or you're not quite there yet, back up, go to the last point of understanding. Or better yet, take the information to your guitar and start exploring it on the guitar, and then come back to the course. I think it's really a two-way street between the actual fundamental knowledge that you're learning, paper and pencil kind of stuff, versus playing on the guitar. And they work. They actually help one another. So I think that's a really good observation. Melanie says the declaration is a video. Yes, I would love for you to submit a video. I mean, we are giving away a pretty darn awesome guitar, so I think a video submission is worthy. I'm gonna say it. I think a video submission is worthy. I'm getting a lot of encouragement to not rush here, so I appreciate that. Michael K. listed the instructions on the Fretboard Wizard declaration in the comments there, but you'll also be getting follow-up emails. So don't feel like, again, with these lives, I may leave out some pieces of information simply because my brain it's like a pinball machine in there. Let's just be honest. But we'll follow up with some emails to make sure that you know all the details. So make sure to check your emails and always open those emails because they do contain the details on giveaways and fun things that are happening like that. So let's see. I want to see if there were any other questions that popped through. Ernie says this. Hashtag question. This was a huge help. I was so lost with Fretboard Wizard at first. I'm glad you said that. And I think I never want anybody to come into the program thinking that they have to adhere to a certain schedule or adhere to a certain schedule of even understanding. I personally spent, when I was learning this stuff, learning the musical alphabet, I was taught this stuff through standard notation, by the way. Some of you might be wondering, like, hey, where's the standard notation in this music theory stuff? I don't want to use it because I think it's a limiting factor. I've always equated it to be, standard notation is fantastic, and I'm not knocking it at all. I think it's a great way to express musical notation. It's time tested and fantastic. But learning standard notation and theory at the same time is like being dropped in a foreign country, not knowing the language and not having a translator. It's like all this stuff is mounting up against you, and it's like too many hurdles. Wow, I don't. Why would I put the odds against you? I'd rather just explain it in a more of a conversational, written way, not using standard notation. And again, I'm not saying standard notation is bad. I think standard notation is fantastic, and I think learning it is a great asset for those that want to use it. I just think that when you start to add a bunch of stuff together, it starts to muddy the waters and maybe dilute the real useful message here, and that is theory that's applicable to your guitar. That's what I wanted to do. I kind of got off track here, but I wanted to ask, for those of you on the live right now, did you have any light bulb moments? Did you have any small wins from this session, or maybe in the last couple weeks as you're starting to dabble and go through the Fretboard Wizard materials? If that's the case, in the comments, put hashtag small win or hashtag light bulb moment, and I'd love to read through a couple of those. Firstly, for the sheer celebration of it, but secondly, sometimes your light bulb moment can lead to somebody else's light bulb moment. I say things one way from one perspective, but somebody hearing it from your mouth might help them make the connection. So that's why I ask for your small wins. So please, in the comments, hashtag small win, hashtag light bulb moment, and let me know what it was. Maybe the major scale, maybe the chord matrix, and its applicability to the guitar. Just let me know. I'm just kind of curious. Sorry, that was a weird pause while I drank coffee. Marvy asks this. Hey, Tony, what was the complete title of that course? Foundations of Fretboard Navigation. For those of you looking to kind of brush up on your note-finding skills, or for those of you wishing to gain some note-finding skills, some easy ways to find and memorize notes on the fingerboard, Foundations of Fretboard Navigation is a course that I want you to check out. It actually puzzle pieces really nicely with Fretboard Wizard, and kind of puts the focus a little bit more on the fretboard, the actual physical fretboard, and finding notes. And then when you come back to Fretboard Wizard, you might be looking at things through a different lens. So that's a very, very. I'm glad you asked for that clarification. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little bit. Oh, shoot. I'm seeing some small wins come in. I'm just going to go ahead and read them off the comments here because it's kind of a flood, and it's pretty darn exciting, to be honest. All right. Let me go back up here. Melanie G, small win, playing the dominant 7 in place of the diminished chord. Bruce S, small win, the light really went off in the transposition lesson. Now I know how to change to any key by myself. That's awesome. Another one from Bruce S, light bulb moment, the construction of chords and how I can build them down the neck. Fantastic. I think this is the middle of a discussion, but Puppy Doc says this. Greg P says, I'm just the opposite, but I started with tab. I suspect you started with standard. Very common chicken or egg discussions, like, do you start with standard notation? Do you start with tab? In my opinion, whatever resonates with you is what you should start with. Whatever makes it easy for you, whatever makes it fun for you, whatever makes you feel like, okay, I'm digging this guitar thing. If that's looking at a standard notation, great. If that's looking at tab, great. Two ways to the same end, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Oh, brain power is fizzling pretty hard. Cross says this, small win. The cage system has taken the fear out of movable chords for me. The more I work with them, the more I actually prefer to use them over the traditional chords. That's really a huge win, Cross. I have to say that the cage system took me a while to understand took me a good while to understand while I was first learning it, but once it started to click and I saw the usefulness of movable chords and those closed position chords, I really thought to myself, wow, this, even if I don't use these closed position chords all the time, they offer me this beautiful view of the fretboard and a way to chunk down the fretboard. So that's awesome, Cross. I think that's rad. Chuck in New Mexico says, small win. Knowing how chords are formed is a big win. Great. That's fantastic. Ed Hurt says, small win. Yes, you made the chord matrix understandable. I hope I can remember it. Which brings up a really good point. I've seen a lot of different students go through Fretboard Wizard, and a lot of folks do various things to lock these concepts in. I've seen students make spreadsheets of each key and the chord matrix in each key. If that helps you lock it in, awesome. If just simply writing it out helps you lock it in, awesome. If you want to take one key for 1 week and really study it, do the chord matrix, do the major scale, do the whole deal, awesome. There's so many different ways to help remember it, but I will say that the cliche statement, if you don't use it, you lose it, applies here. Which is why I really want you to take an active step in applying this to the guitar, because the more you learn and the more you then apply to the guitar, the more it really sticks. And the more you use this stuff, the more you actually, it's less about remembering and it becomes intuitive. That might seem like a long shot right now, but that's truly the case. And I think it's one of the most useful things. So that's an awesome small win. And I'm so glad that the chord matrix was a little bit more understandable after this. Steve says, small win, finding the key by ear using the low E string, enlightening. Low E for enlightening. I get it. Ernie says, light bulb moment. My aha moment was the chord matrix part. Huge. Awesome. Chuck S., light bulb. Your answer to the question regarding the minor scale chord sequence cleared up a lot of confusion in my head, which hurts a lot less now. I'm glad to hear that. That's super cool. Beatrice had a light bulb on 7th chords. Dr. K says, small win. Being a trumpet player all my life, I had an ear for a single note. Your chord ear training opened up a whole new experience that I was missing, like someone turned on Dolby for the first time. That's so cool. I love the tie-in with the Dolby there. That's a good small win. I appreciate that. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear. Sylvie B says, small win, realizing that a minor chord is the inverse of a major chord in terms of the steps, and that the diminished chord is different from both. Awesome. Yeah. And that's to me, and I'm sharing a lot of my own journey here just because I don't want if you're sitting there and you're thinking, I'm not connecting all the dots. That's okay. It took me a while. That very thing that Sylvie just said, minor versus major, and then being the inverses of each other in terms of major third and minor third. I remember reading that. And I remember asking my teacher, Professor Tashan, Tashjan. She was like first chair violin in the local orchestra that we had. Great teacher. She wrote me a glowing recommendation, which I was happy about because I wasn't the best student. But I remember her explaining major chords and minor chords, just how I did in the kind of the tonality and the third being the pivotal role there. And I remember going home for like a week and just like looking at it and thinking, I don't understand why those are different. But then it clicked. It took me a while, and it clicked. And that's what I was saying before about how some things can be so simple and we try and overcomplicate it. But if we just look at what's in front of us, sometimes that's it. And that's all that there needs to be. But it's cool to hear that, Sylvie. Thanks for sharing that. Chris T says, light bulb moment, I struggled with finding keys. The other day I had Stand By Me stuck in my head, so I picked up my guitar and sang the song and figured out the key by finding the notes I was singing. That's awesome, and that's actually a really great study song because it's very linear in terms of the scale. So that's really awesome observation. Let's see. Ooh. I don't know if I want to open that can of worms. There was a question about modes. I might dive into that for just a smidgen of a second. Let me get through a couple small wins here. Small win. As I began to break down each major key relative to the formula, I realized I was writing out the circle of fifths in a really natural way. I'm getting it. So cool. John B. Small win. Could you believe I was actually finding the key? I was actually finding the key in the exercises. Not all, but most. That's so awesome. Greg P. says, I took theory since I was 8 years old. I was taught notation, never took guitar lessons, so I never figured out tab. Hey, like I said, it's two roads that lead to the same destination. If the sound that comes out of your guitar is a good one, however you made that sound, by ear, traditional notation, tab, I don't know, other types of notation, more power to you. Michael W. Lightbulb moment. Understanding the notes for improv was a minor brain explosion. That's awesome. Michelle had a lightbulb moment around the whole and half step arrangement for a major scale. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. So helpful. Small win from SoCal Ian. Every time I do Fretboard Wizard, I see something new. Even reinforcement of the matrix info is great stuff. On that note, Ian and everybody, the chord matrix is the single most powerful tool, in my opinion, that you'll come across when it comes to taking music theory and looking at it in a way that's applicable to all things guitar. When I'm talking rhythm guitar, I'm talking chord progressions, I'm talking transposition, I'm talking improvisation, I'm talking manipulating chords. It is the single most powerful tool. And I think your investment in time in the chord matrix and really, truly understanding it is an investment that will reap benefits time and time and time again. I'm talking major guitar dividends there. Lightbulb moment from JT. I posted a 2-part comment related to the 5-note finding patterns. Awesome. John Sanchez, a small win. Your caged explanation was a big help. I have a lot more to learn with the system, but it does what it does for the first time. Tom Carpenter says, a small win, getting to understand chord construction. Larry, small win, using the cage system was excellent, very useful. Judith says, lightbulb moment was finally understanding what the 1 chord was. That's awesome. That number system is pretty rad. Rad is a really lame way to describe it. The Nashville number system ties together the chord matrix and its actual applicability in terms of transposition and even communicating chords. So that's way awesome. Sylvie B says, yes, understanding that the 7th diminished chord has the same notes as the dominant 5th with an added 7th. That's awesome and it really when you could start using these rules to make music easier for you, that's awesome. And I made jokes about breaking rules earlier, but truly understanding the rules allows you to break them and know you're breaking them and know why you're breaking them and doing so intentionally. It's less about kind of exploring around and being like, wow, this sounds cool. Learning this stuff allows you to start to name it and replicate it. It doesn't take the magic away. It just allows you to give it a name and replicate it again, which is an extremely empowering thing. Let's see. There's so many wins. This is insane. Well, I have long exceeded my time here on this check-in, but I want to truly share my gratitude with you for sharing your time with me today, asking such incredible questions, and really hanging with me on some of these explanations. And I'm speaking to everybody here because we are learning this collectively. You know, the questions that you ask help other people understand as well. And what I love about the Fretboard Wizard sessions is that it really allows us to all come together under kind of one banner of, hey, let's figure this darn thing out so I can play and have more fun and not muddy the water with a bunch of stuff. Let's just look at the really useful stuff and apply that. And we each can take our own journey and take it as far as we want, but this foundational stuff is so important. So again, huge thanks to all of you for sharing your time with me today. Before I let you go for today, a couple of dates I do want you to remember. Again, I'll be emailing you with some reminders here, but our next live is going to be just a general Tony's Acoustic Challenge live guitar party. That's going to happen on December 2nd at 11 a.m. It won't be solely Fretboard Wizard focused, but I will entertain some questions. I think it's good, again, for people to engage in discussion and at least hear the terminology. Your Fretboard Wizard, excuse me, my voice is really going. Your Fretboard Wizard declaration is due on December 15th by 5 p.m. And the reason it's due then is because I want you to be entered into the giveaway to win a Waterloo WL12 or WL14. I'll be picking the winner the following day, which is another date I need you to remember, and that's our Fretboard Wizard wrap-up party on December 16th. That's going to happen at 11 a.m., and that's going to be really fun. We'll hit more questions. I'm sure you'll have more questions by then. And yeah, again, thank you, everyone. Really a huge pat on the back. You should pat yourselves on the back for taking the leap into Fretboard Wizard and just digging into this information. I know for a fact your guitar journey will progress at a much more rapid rate because of this information at whatever level you apply it, be that just understanding it on paper or actually starting to take it to the guitar, which I encourage you to do. So thanks, everyone. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of the day, and I'll see you on December 2nd at 11 a.m. for the Tony's Acoustic Challenge live guitar party. Again, thanks. I can't say thanks enough, but I'm going to say it one more time, and then I'm going to click end, and I'm going to drink some water because I'm losing my voice. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Cheers. Guitar Geeks Unite. Take care.